I didn't cry when my grandfather died. That fact bothered me for weeks because he was the only one in my family who had ever treated me like a full person. Not a project, not an obligation, not the quiet one who should be grateful for leftovers. But grief doesn't always arrive as tears. Sometimes it arrives as stillness so deep it feels like your chest has been emptied and wiped clean. The accident was sudden, a road that curved too sharply, a guardrail that didn't hold. The news came through my aunt, brisk and oddly efficient, as if she were canceling a dinner reservation. At the funeral, my relatives gathered like shareholders after a bad quarter. They hugged me lightly. Their eyes slid past my face and toward the lawyer standing a few feet away. I noticed that even then. The way attention bent, not toward loss, but toward process. The reading of the will happened 3 days later. I sat in a leather chair that smelled faintly of polish and age, listening to a man with a careful voice explaining trusts, holdings, foundations. My name didn't come up at first. Neither did anyone else's. Just structures, safeguards, long-term strategies. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. "And the remainder of the estate," he said, "passes in full to." He said my name. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel the numbers that large stop having texture, but because of the silence that followed. The air changed. Someone exhaled sharply. My mother laughed once, a short sound that died quickly. There were questions. Accusations disguised as clarifications. Was this current? Had there been amendments? Surely this was a temporary arrangement. The lawyer answered calmly. Everything was in order. My grandfather had been precise, deliberate. On the drive home, my phone buzzed nonstop. My sister told me to think about the family. My uncle reminded me how much they'd all sacrificed. My mother didn't ask. She told. "You'll transfer it," she said that night, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "This isn't yours to manage." I stared at the wood grain beneath my hands. I remembered being 8 years old, spilling juice on that same table, my mother's voice sharp with disappointment, as if clumsiness were a moral failure. "I won't," I said. The word landed quietly. It didn't shake. It didn't apologize. My mother's face changed, not into anger exactly, but into something colder. Assessment. By midnight, my suitcase was by the door. No one shouted. No one cried. My sister wouldn't meet my eyes. My uncle held the door open. "You're making a mistake?" he said, not unkindly. "Family is everything." I stepped outside into the night air with the strange sensation of being lighter and more exposed at the same time. The mansion was nothing like the house I'd grown up in. It wasn't ostentatious. It was old, restrained, set back from the road behind iron gates my grandfather had rarely closed. Inside, the rooms were spacious but lived in, the books with broken spines, chairs positioned for conversation, not display. I slept poorly the first night. Every sound echoed. Wealth has a way of amplifying silence. In the morning, I made coffee in a kitchen designed for staff I'd never had, and sat alone at a long table thinking about how my grandfather used to eat toast, standing up, newspaper tucked under his arm, as if he were always halfway between places. By noon the gate buzzed. My mother's car was first. Then my uncle's. Then my sister's. They didn't come in. They didn't need to. The paperwork was already in motion. Eviction. Emergency injunction. The assumption that possession was temporary and compliance inevitable. I stood in the entry hall, phone in hand, listening to their voices rise faintly outside. I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest, not fear exactly. Resolve maybe. Or simply the absence of retreat. The door opened. They stepped inside with the confidence of people who had never been denied access before. And then they stopped. Standing beside me was a man in his late 50s, wearing a dark suit that looked worn in rather than new. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but his eyes were alert. My grandfather's attorney didn't speak at first. He simply held out a folder. "I'm here in my capacity as executor," he said finally, "and as legal guardian of the estate's residential properties." My uncle scoffed. "We have our own counsel." "I'm sure you do," the attorney replied. "They've been notified." "As has the court." My mother's gaze flicked to me. For the first time since the will reading, there was uncertainty there. You can't just, she began. We can, the attorney said gently. And we have. Any attempt to remove the beneficiary from this property constitutes interference with a lawful transfer of possession. Silence stretched. No one yelled. No one made a scene. The shock lived in the stillness, in the way my sister's shoulders slumped, in the way my mother pressed her lips together as if holding back something acidic. They left without saying goodbye. After the door closed, the attorney turned to me. Your grandfather anticipated this, he said. He wanted you protected from exactly this kind of pressure. I nodded. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired and steady. That night, I walked through the house slowly, touching familiar things. The back of a chair where my grandfather used to drape his jacket. The window he preferred for watching storms roll in. I understood then that inheritance wasn't a reward. It was a responsibility to myself first, to refuse the old bargain that demanded submission in exchange for belonging. I didn't know what my relationship with my family would become. Distance, probably. Silence, maybe permanent. But as I stood alone in that quiet house, I felt something settle into place. Not victory, dignity.